So obviously, like growing up, a lot of people dream about. I feel like a lot of kids dream about competing. I don't know if you ever did about esports. I remember the league system in Black Ops 2, and I can't name you how many little teams I've been a part of. But like going that step further and like founding a team and then making it to T1, um, how did like that start for you? Like how did you end up becoming a founder for a T1 team and then even not even an American team over in APAC? You're kind of like the odd one out. It feels like.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a. I mean, I definitely wanted to be a pro player when I was younger, but then I realized that I was like 17 with like a 200 millisecond reaction time. I'm like, I'm not cut out for this. Um, so yeah, so I like way back. I started off like Minecraft competitive PvP, Bad Lion, UHC, that stuff, and I went over. I transferred over at the same time that Dante from the Overwatch League transferred over. I transferred over, and so did a few other people. And then, like that whole group, it wasn't really a
What
close
year
group.
would have that
It was just
been?
when Overwatch came out, so 2016, 2017.
So you transferred
Um,
pretty early on to Siege.
no. So I went from Minecraft to Overwatch. Then
Oh, okay.
I went through a whole thing: Minecraft to Overwatch, Overwatch to Rocket League, Rocket League to Siege. I started playing Siege, uh, like right around COVID. Like I downloaded the game maybe like January 2020.
Okay.
Uh, I played the alpha, and I was like, it's a cool game, but I don't know if it's worth $60. And then yeah, just never got around. Played January 2020, I believe, was my first season actually playing. COVID hit, um, and I played hockey in high school, super hard competitor. I was still in high school at the time, so I played Siege. Within 3 months of playing Siege, I let me see. Do I have this right? It's actually so crazy that I don't even know if I have my timeline right. Oh yeah, so within the first year of playing Siege, I went from not playing the game at all to like Christmas Day actually, 2020. I joined at the time. I think it was USA Can't Hockey, which then turned into Hype Unit, and it was a tier 2 team. So went from not playing the game to being an analyst for tier 2. A week before roster lock happened, our head coach left the team. We just stopped hearing from him. So I stepped up as a head coach, all still within my first year of coaching Siege. I said I can't coach and be an analyst, so I need to bring on someone else. So I brought on Koma, who's now working for Dark Zero. And yeah, that's kind of how coaching started and how I really got into the scene.
Did you have pro play experience before, or like in a
No,
different game?
I was like a tier 3 player at best in both um, Overwatch and Rocket League. Rocket League, I was going to go. Um, I was probably going to go to like some shitty D3 or like D3 equivalent school for Rocket League for college, and then COVID hit, got into Siege, so I switched over there. But no real high level experience. Let's say like top of amateur maybe.
So speaking of college, you were a part of, I would say, the early collegiate scene. When you played on Arizona State, did you go to Arizona State?
Yeah, went to Arizona State all
Okay.
4 years.
So
Graduated
so kind
this
of
May.
being a part of that early collegiate scene for sure, and now looking at teams like Akron, who not only is the top of collegiate but even the top of tier 2, and kind of the role you played with the early collegiate scene, and then even early kind of, well, not early tier 2, but I would say the kind of revitalizing a tier 2 with Element 2. You were coach for CLB. Do you kind of feel like a kind of sense of pride that you kind of laid that groundwork that even now collegiate teams aren't seen as just like throwaway trash teams. They're actually being able to make waves up in T2, and it looks like college might actually become a pipeline to go to the pros instead of having to battle up your way through college, then tier 3, then tier 2, then get to the pros.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a player, I was far from, let's say one of the greats. I was at best a mediocre player at the top of collegiate, but there were some things that I did at Arizona State that I was very proud of. For example, bringing on Mr. B to Arizona State, being able to work on projects such as on Ping, which is, let's call it the ESPN for collegiate R6 weekly power rankings and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, I think collegiate has, in my opinion, it was always going to get better over time. Because if you think about it, back in the day, tier 3 was dominated by, high schoolers. And then, naturally as they go into college, they'll play more collegiate because, it's this massive group of, let's say, 200, 300 people all going into college at the same time. We're all very talented at Siege, and if you can get a few good players together, naturally teams will form, especially if you have a school like Akron where they're giving out full ride scholarships. Fisher's another example. Oklahoma Christian is another example. But, like, the more talent there is for people to choose from, the better off collegiate's going to get.
So with your background, in collegiate and then a little bit of element as a player and as a coach, does that kind of firsthand experience like influence the decisions you make as a founder? Your technical title on Wikipedia is CCO. I'm not sure if that's accurate or not.
Yeah, now it's just managing partner, but most of what I do is on the marketing and social media side.
Yeah, so does that kind of affect how you, like, your decisions you're making, or is it just kind of like something that's nice to have because you can relate to the players more than maybe other orgs can?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely makes a big impact being, in the shoes of players in the past, or knowing how it feels to be on the receiving end of negotiations or anything like that. I think one of the big strengths that we have at Daystar is we are one of the few orgs in Siege that is really by the community for the community. I mean, as far as I know, we're the youngest ownership group in Siege by about, if I had to guess, at least a decade.
Yeah.
And, all three of us all came up in the Siege community running amateur teams. And, yeah, I mean, it's just a big plus when you can understand what the players are going through, what the players want, what the fans want, because I can just reflect, when I was watching, Prime NAL in Las Vegas, this is what I would have liked to see orgs do, is this. So, just trying to replicate that, but obviously modernize some aspects.
Yeah. So, speaking of, Daystar and how everything kind of came together, you're an APAC org, you're in T1. How does the idea of Daystar Rising come about and deciding to pick up a young, arguably, I would call it a tier 2.5 team? It was, you picked up Kaysen. Is that something that kind of just happened? You guys had an opportunity? Was it planned? And could we see that lower roster, that ACAD roster, so to speak, come back?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we are an org that is representing APAC at the tier 1 level. I think it's also important to continue to grow the grassroots scene all around. I mean, last year we had, I I mean, 4 separate rosters in 3 different regions. You know, we had our APL roster, obviously. We had Daystar Rising with Kason and Scary, Soapy, and all of them. You know, we had a women's, or we still have a women's team.
Yeah, yeah. You guys have the women's team still.
And then we also had which I think not many people know, we also had a Brazilian Tier 2 team. Right now, 2 of the players are playing in SILCQ. And we got a player to Tier 1 through, you know, just helping him grow and then getting him onto 9Z. So, you know, I think it's very important to be connected in the roots across the ecosystem. Now, as to the question of will we see another Daystar Rising in North America, I think that's to be determined. I think ideally we'd like to go into APAC and continue to bolster our hold there. But first, I think what we need to do alongside Ubisoft is set the groundwork for Tier 2 players in the amateur competition in APAC before we can justify having another team.
So, you guys formed in 2024, correct?
Yeah, March of 2024.
And you guys picked up APR, that roster, who did pretty good from what I remember looking at their finishes. And then you guys played a year, 2025 rolls around, and you guys decide to completely overhaul the roster, and you guys acquired Dire Wolves. I believe you acquired 4 out of their 5. Or no, you acquired, I think, all 5 of their, if I remember correctly. One becomes a sub.
You just cut out there. I just heard Dire Wolves.
Okay, so, yeah, you guys pick up Dire Wolves. And I believe you guys brought on the whole roster, and you guys kept only one of your original players. Was that a move that naturally just kind of developed and happened? Or were you guys already kind of looking to move pieces around and rebuild, and it just so happens this whole roster is up for grabs?
Yeah, I mean, I think the goal of any organization is to constantly look at options and keep on trying to, you know, let's say punch our way up. So when we reached out to Jogor, who we've now signed 3 times in 2 years, but when we reached out to Jogor, and he said, "Hey, this Dire Wolves roster might be willing to come over and join you guys," we found that was, you know, something that worked for us very naturally. You know, because we still get to keep the same Chinese-speaking core. I mean, like the Chinese-speaking community engaged with us, but we get to bolster our firepower, as well as bringing on Azuki from, at the time, what will be Rival Esports. We get to bring him on, who's a star 18-year-old rifler who actually relegated our previous roster in Stage 2 of 2024. So we just figured, you know, the best thing that we can do is, you know, take the people that relegated us and take the, you know, kind of top dogs of our language and try to pick them up.
So making a pretty big roster move on a young team like that, you know, obviously you're gonna face risk. Not having, you know, bankroll and kind of a big name to support if it goes south. How do you then identify that, okay, this was the right move, let's go ahead and switch our mind frame from getting the right players to now developing them into like their peak and, you know, becoming more consistent and high level competitors? And on the opposite side of that, when do you now look towards the time to make another roster move? Or do you just focus solely on becoming as good as you possibly can become?
You know, I think in terms of developing a roster, I think you're always looking at finding the best options and finding the pieces that you can develop. Or maybe, you know, they're not ready. There's someone out there that is not ready to join the team and be a star player today, but maybe next year or maybe the year after. It's just about being on the outlook and always constantly trying to find the option. I mean, luckily or unluckily for us, we have a pretty narrow option of players to pick from.
Mm-hmm.
Just naturally, due to the fact that our team communicates in Mandarin, and I'm not going to be able to take Ions and get him fluent in Mandarin in one off season. So I think it's just about always evaluating options, always looking for the best pieces. And what was the other part of the question?
Is there a certain point where you start maybe to look for another roster move? For example, do you go, okay, well, if in, 2 stages we're not at this position, we need to make a move? Or is that just something that when it happens, and it's time to move on? Is there any kind of goal you
like rhyme or reason behind it? Yeah, I think there's always internal goals that we have. I mean, I think this year this team, I still think they're not at their top potential yet. I think there's so much upside for this team. But I think it's kind of a mix of both. You both have those goals, but if there's an opportunity that comes by that's too good to pass up, you also need to take that opportunity. So it's not as if it's my way or the highway.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this roster is incredibly talented. I think we've shown this year that we are one of the big players. And I mean, if you look in the past, the core of this roster, has attended majors, has attended SIs. So I think it's really just, giving them the platform and the resources to compete at the level that they can.
Yeah. So, I know you said earlier you're more of the content side and marketing side, but as fans, we often just see results on Wikipedia and on Twitter and stuff, and we're not really into the process. Mint did a Turtle Tactics thing where he was going to stream everything, and that was kind of a real big eye opener for a lot of fans. But even then, a lot of scrims and VOD review stuff that guys do on their own, and even kind of contracts and long term planning, we don't get to see as much as we get to see in other sports, and even some other esports. What does like your day to day kind of look like, and what kind of hand do you have into making sure the guys are, making sure we're hitting VOD review. We're getting the not just scrim scheduled, but the right scrim scheduled, and working towards constantly getting better.
Yeah, I mean, definitely on my day-to-day front, it really depends on what's going on. Like, right now at this moment, a lot of it is on the content side, planning for this upcoming year. And, obviously we have APAC Last Chance qualifiers coming up. So if we make SI, there's a lot of preparation that needs to be done for that in terms of not only, content, but also logistics. Making sure we can get the teams out there, looking for opportunities to boot camp early, visas. There's a lot of day-to-day behind-the-scenes things that maybe aren't glorious but have to happen. And then, in terms of making sure people VOD review and scrim and get the right scrims and stuff, I really leave that up to our head coach. I think, the reason why you have a head coach is because you believe in them and you believe in their process and their routine. And if you don't have that, there's no point of having that person as a head coach. So really, I'm pretty hands off. I do wake up pretty early, so when I can, I like to go in, watch their scrims. But yeah, a lot of it is more on content and logistics, and you just trying to figure out a way in which we can open up a window for fans. Especially this year, it's one of our big focuses is giving fans a bigger window into what it looks like to be a part of a pro team.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And so speaking, about like the day to day and what players go through, we often hear, especially in NA, I'm a Dream fan. I'm in his streams a lot. He often talks about how much they scrim. I think SR and their Discord has like a scrim schedule where like they even post who they're scrimming. Um, APAC teams, it's notoriously harder for them to scrim and for them to find scrims outside of APAC. And we often hear about the struggles of operating an APAC team. Is there any advantages though that we maybe don't see as NA fans? Maybe a culture thing or a regional thing that maybe NA or EU or Brazil doesn't have that makes it almost special to kind of be in the APAC region and have a team over there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of hit it right on the head with the culture. Not only are, I mean, I think, obviously I might be a bit biased here, but I think APAC has some of the most naturally talented players in terms of mechanics. But also, it's just a real family when you look at APAC. There's at the major qualifiers in Melbourne, on that last night before everyone had their flights in the next morning, we had our whole team out in a karaoke room. We brought along Gotti from PSG, and we had Turd and Ape, I believe, were supposed to join us as well. But it's really like you can go up to anyone, you can have a good conversation with them because it's such a close knit community, and it's really something where everyone wants APAC to grow, and it's the same mission no matter what. It's something that I think is harder to find in other regions is that sense of camaraderie and sense of you know enjoyment of the game. Let's say everyone at that major qualifier, we all enjoyed the game. We all enjoyed talking about the game. Every single person I could go up to, strike up a conversation. It doesn't matter, and it'll be good. It'll be a good time. It'll be fun. So I think the culture's such a huge thing that people won't see unless they're actively a part of it.
So, with two teams now in APEC running fully import rosters, um, I don't know. I'm sure you've seen the ongoing debate about people liking import rosters versus hating them versus kind of feeling indifferent about them and the impact they have on the region. Personally, I think one or two kind of an all ships rises situation will happen. You have a team over there now that's gonna be able to scrim. That's gonna give a better look than other teams. Where do you fall kind of on that line of, one or two might be healthy for the region, or would you like to see both of them go back to Brazil and those spots be filled with APEC teams with APEC players? And do you think
Yeah,
maybe stronger scrims like that could ultimately lead to a better APAC region?
yeah. I mean, I think famously, I made a post that said, "Get the fuck out of our region."
I might have
After we
responded to
beat
that
Elevate,
post. Yeah, I might have responded to that.
after we beat Elevate. So I think I'm a pretty passionate person, even though I'm not from APAC. I see how hard our players work and the opportunity that they have. But I also want to say I think the two situations between Elevate and D Plus are drastically different in terms of how and why they came to importing a roster. If you look at the scene of Korea right now, there is, I think it's actually just 6 players who are currently without an organized or like not in tier 1 that are from Korea. So it's not like you have a lot of options there. And if you don't think that roster can be a winning roster or competitive enough to your standards, I think it makes sense to go out and import a roster. Elevate on the other hand, I think especially when you're in a partner slot, being the only representative of Southeast Asia in an event like Reload, I think there is some responsibility that you have to showcase that region, because ultimately you got partner because you have a history in the region and because you have fans in the region that care about, Elevate R6. And I think in a lot of people's minds, it might have tainted their view on the organization.
Yeah.
I think it's something where if it's done in a way like D plus where there's no other option, I think it's, I can't shame them for wanting to do what's best, not only for business but also for, in terms of their organization. If you have no other options, what are you supposed to do? This is the first time I believe D plus has ever had a foreign roster or like a non-Korean player on their organization. I might be wrong on that. You'll have to check my math there. But if you're going out and you're importing someone or a full team, why import from Japan? Why not import from Brazil, the strongest region in the game?
Yeah.
And then, I think with Elevate, I think it's a little bit of a different story. I think they had a strong roster, and the collapse of that roster only made for Weibo to be stronger and ultimately defeat them. But if you look at our roster, we're 2-1 against Elevate this year. We've lost one time, and we won when it mattered, and I believe in stage 1 in the regular season. So there is talent in APAC, and I think it needs to be showcased more.
So would you like the 3/5 rule to come back, or do you think no import unless it's a D plus situation where literally there's not enough players to realistically fill a competitive roster?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was actually advocating to Blast during the major to someone from Blast to the major qualifiers for a 3/5 requirement, and maybe that 3/5 is something where, if a player's been competing for, last year I'd say 3 stages in a row, but basically like a year and a half within a region or 2 years in a region, whatever, they become like in League of Legends it's called a LTR, stand for Legacy Long-Term Resident or Legacy Resident. So having something where if you want to import a full roster, you can, but it'll take a few years for you to do. I think that's something. I think in exceptional cases of lack of available players, like D plus, I think that's also a situation where importing's fine. But generally, I think we have regionalized leagues for a reason, and having something like what the LCS is now, where half of the organizations and half of the player base is from Korea, and teams would rather import Korean academy players than develop talent of their own, I think is something that more and more people are kind of going against, because at that point, what's the point of having a league for the Americas, for North America, if it's going to be full of import players?
Yeah. So with all the challenges APAC faces, what's something you would like Ubisoft or Blast to do, like infrastructure or format wise, to help, like we just talked about the 3/5 rule, to level the playing field? Or do you think that kind of overcoming the challenges is just kind of that charm of being an APAC team, and kind of just so happens that it's a little bit harder in APAC than it is in other regions?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gotten a lot better. I think there's some things where, no matter what, it's just not, like, unless we go to a LAN league, ping is just always going to be an issue. That's just how it'll work. But there's some things like, for example, I don't know if you know this, but APAC's the only region that isn't automatically a part of the R6 share program. So while other teams get affiliate license and stipends, APAC teams don't. And, naturally, it just puts APAC teams at a disadvantage. And, there's some regions like OCE where they don't have a single partner team. There's not a single partner organization that represents Australia. So if, something like Reload or a partner only event or tournament was a long term thing, then, I think it's a shame that regions aren't, maybe equally isn't uh, the correct word, but, it's, I would personally have all regions be represented in some way, shape, or form at the partner level because it's so important to fans, to be able to support your region through purchasing skins or in terms of something like Reload, being able to watch your team compete at an international event.
Yeah, so looking at Siege, talking about events, compared to a lot of the other esports, we definitely are the driest well out of them all. I think I made a tweet, not wanting to get into the EWC stuff, but arguing about it. I tweeted that CS:GO had, 23 A and S tier events. Valorant had like 17, and when you count stages for Ubisoft and Blast for R6, it only comes out to like 12. So, the more, and my argument was, the more that we can get these teams in international play and more opportunities to earn money and to make it a career, then, the better. Are you, do you like kind of the new format they've had this year where, we've added it back in Major and, we're kind of more month to month, more playing time and less downtime? Or would you like to see maybe, screw the regional stages and let's get a DreamHack or an IEM or, maybe two more, minor international events going and more opportunity to kind of have that international play?
Yeah, I mean, I think having international events is always good, but you need to look at the opposite side of things and look at, Counter Strike, for example, where it's all international play, and what that ends up meaning is that if you want to be a competitive roster, you need to be based in Europe because that's where all of the competition is. So I like the regional format. I definitely wish that there were more opportunities for teams to compete, or larger opportunities in terms of like actual teams that can go to the major. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there's only 16 teams that went to the major. If we had 24 teams, sure, it's more money coming out of Ubisoft's pocket, which obviously, they're trying to keep things sustainable and keep it at a cost. But, if we had 8 more teams there, I think that's 8 more opportunities for really strong content creation to come out of organizations, or, you know, just opportunities for players to go to events for the first time and, being able to justify it. Both to the org in terms of, hey, we went to this international event, or, even to families and friends being like, hey, this is an actual profession and this is, worth my time doing.
Yeah. So maybe more spots at international events than more international events itself. Because
Yeah.
I've noticed that too, that we went through a period where I think I believe 2019 is when we had every event had 24 slots except one had 20.
I
And
believe it
now
was the same for 2022.
and now we're going kind of reverse where we're cutting slots out. It just, it's one of those things for, I'm all about, getting the players as much opportunity and money as they possibly can get, because for a lot of people this is a dream job, and the more people that can live their dream, I think that's a healthier environment and healthier ecosystem and community for everybody. So it really does, even as a fan, seeing one of my favorite teams miss out because of a game where it's like, well, now if we add, 8 more slots, now I'm getting 2 more teams going. I might buy a couple more skins, Ubisoft. It's just.
Yeah, I mean, I think in an era where you can play, I mean, last year, 2024, we literally played 8 games. That was our entire 2024 because we were able to get relegated out in between stages. And when you chalk up a year to 8 games, or even this year, 16 BO1s. If you are a team like, I believe our rival seven, at least in Southeast Asia, didn't make playoffs either time.
Yeah.
So if you're a team like that where your entire year is 16 BO1s, I think that feels a little rough, and it feels hard as an organization to justify more investment into it. But I think there's pros and cons to everything. There's not a right solution for anyone. It's just about finding the best option.
So what's a misconception you think people have about running an esports organization? Maybe one that like friends or family has had before and kind of asked you about, or one maybe you had before going into this, where now you realize, oh, this is like nothing what I thought it was gonna be. It's a complete 180 than what I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think let's see, maybe this isn't a misconception, but like, let's say a misunderstanding that I think the general esports community has is that 9 times out of 10, I mean, I even go higher than that, but 9 times out of 10, you're losing money every time you pick up a team, and the only way you get it back, at least in my eyes, has been selling players, sponsorships, or making content that is that brings in enough revenue to fund the roster. But yeah, it's really something where there's not a lot of money in just picking up a team and having them play games. So where you really make money is through. I mean, I believe content is king, and we'll see that more and more as time goes on.
So obviously, like we've talked about, Daystar in 2 years has grown a lot. From coming in as a tier 1 team in APAC, you had the North American Academy team, you had the South American Academy team, the women's roster. What does you kind of just touched on a little bit, kind of content focused. What does that mean for the future of Daystar? Kind of, is it maybe expanding into a different esport as well, or is it taking the players you have now and almost kind of sending them through content creator boot camp and pumping out a lot of side content as pro players?
Yeah, I mean, I think the future looks like continuing to try to become the face of APAC. We have our Daystar 10-mans that we've been working on, and thank you to Ubisoft for giving us the ability to give out a whole bunch of R6 credits to incentivize the players. But I believe just earlier this morning we hit 200 matches played across. It's been maybe 6 weeks now. So 200 matches across 6 weeks with over. Let me check right now, but I believe it's over 270 players, 270 unique players. Let me double check that though.
I might have to join this. Hold on.
Yeah, so 370 unique players, 200 games played in 6 weeks, just an APAC. So I think it's continuing to give opportunity for APAC players to compete and to grow, and even when it comes down to it, it's just like it's more experience that most APAC players won't get of speaking English, which just overall makes the roster stronger or like makes the scene stronger because you can have more mixed rosters like Weibo. And then, in terms of content, we want to give fans more of a reason to support our roster, than just being, a good team. Outside of results, we want to showcase players' personalities more. We want to showcase, the daily life of a Siege player. We want to get more fans involved in Siege, so that'll come through things such as, long-term documentaries, diving into the history of R6, educational stuff such as, guides and understanding and map breakdowns. Yeah, but just generally just making more content about CG sports, because the more there is out there, the more people will want to explore it, and the more fandom will come.
Now, are you guys in a like a boot camp house out there, or do the guys all live alone? I mean, I know it's Hong Kong based, correct? So I know Hong Kong isn't that big.
Yeah, so the players are all in their own homes, but boot camping is something that we definitely want to look at, especially when going to international events. I think the major qualifier was a really big motivator for everyone, because we had all three owners fly out to Australia from the U.S. And then all the players there as well. So it was just a good chance to put obviously faces to names, but also just build up that camaraderie and build up the experience of playing on land, because for two of our players that was their first time actually playing on land, and for the other three it's been about 2 years or so since our last land competition. So it's just putting fuel in the fire.
Well, speaking of land and qualifiers and everything, it does feel like we're arguably closer than ever for an APEC team to kind of break that glass ceiling and make me eat my words of calling APEC the little brother, the little child of Siege, which I'm gonna love when that happens, even if it's not my imported Elevate. What are you guys doing now to make sure when that happens and the APEC team finally lifts the hammer, or the grand final trophy, that DAYSTAR are being named world champions and you guys are the ones doing it, not a different team?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of goes back to what we said is, we might not have the largest budget out there, especially compared to Weibo, which is literally worth billions of dollars. So what we have to do is we just have to be smarter and more efficient. And that just means, in my eyes, it just means better scouting and better resource management. Because at the end of the day, you can have all the money in the world, but if you can't build a strong team culture and you don't know who the next best player is, it doesn't matter. So it's just about, that's why I love these Daystar 10-mans. It gives us an opportunity to, interact with players on a day-to-day basis, see what the future of APAC looks like, and, it helps us, in all honesty, being able to evaluate players and, see how they grow across the years and all of that.
It's almost like you guys are playing Moneyball right now.
Yeah, it's actually exactly what we're doing. We are making the most out of what we have, and hopefully we see results soon.
Well, to close things out, I just want to thank you for cutting out pretty much an hour of your time to sit here and talk to me. What's something about this journey as a founder, running a team, running around and being a part of this community, that has generally surprised you? And if you had to start over tomorrow, what would be something you kind of do differently going into things?
Yeah, I mean, something that surprised me is just, the amount of support and interest there is, and, just generally just how important the fans are. and you know how much that motivates you. And if I had to start all over, let's see, if I had to start all over, I'd I'd probably just, you know, from day one, focus on grassroots and initiative, and you know, just reaching out to more people, hearing more no's, because the worst thing you can do is sit there and expect things to be handed to you. You need to go out and take them, because if you aren't, someone else is.
So obviously